Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following the latest gaming hardware. I'm Damon Hatfield, and this week I'm joined by Max Scoville from Podcast Beyond and IGN Senior Manager, Hardware Content, Bo Moore. We've talked a lot about how the cost of gaming this generation has been going in the wrong direction. Both the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X launched in 2020 at $500. Not quite 6 years later, a PS5 with a disc drive costs $650, and a PS5 Pro costs $900. An Xbox Series X with a disc drive is $800. And a Series S with just 512 gigs of storage is $500. Nintendo Switch 2 launched last year at $450. It will go up to $500 next month. The recently launched Steam Machine costs $1,000 without a controller and just 512 gigs of RAM. The 2TB model with a controller costs over $1,400. Now, Bo penned an op-ed about all this, in which he correctly notes that this is an absolutely terrible time to be in the market for a new gaming console or PC. But worse than that, he doesn't think there is any way back to the $500 console, at least for anyone but Nintendo. Bo, could you explain why you don't think there is hope for a return to console affordability?
Yeah. So first we have to talk a little bit about how we got here, which is, it all started with the COVID-19 pandemic. Supply chains were messed up all over the place. And basically when we launched the consoles in 2020, they, there were shortages. It was really hard to get one. It took almost 2 years or more before you could just buy a PS5 off the shelf. You had to go and find resellers or find stock alerts to be able to buy one. So this meant that, 2 years in, we were still paying full price, if not scalper price for a new console. That, started to ease up about 2 to 3 years in, but then came tariffs, and tariffs drove up the prices of everything. This was what caused Nintendo to launch at $450 instead of $400. It caused, I believe, the first of if there wasn't an immediate price rise of the PS5 and the Series X, they certainly weren't coming down in price. Normally we would start to see things trickle down via a slim console or holiday discounts. We didn't really get much of that. But that too, we almost could have gotten through it, I think. Tariffs eventually, in theory, get rescinded. But then came the chip shortage, and now we are dealing with the AI data center build out that is affecting the price of everything because RAM chips are in pretty much all of our electronics. It's the RAM that is used to make graphics cards, to make CPUs, to make your storage, and of course the RAM itself. And so now, what a RAM stick that would have cost maybe $100 before, a relatively insignificant portion of an overall PC build or a console, that's now $300, $400, $600 potentially. And so you have these pieces of hardware that are just way, way, way more expensive than they should have been. Now, the problem with anything returning to normal is that it's not going away anytime soon. The RAM shortage is expected to last well into 2028, if not longer. And so by the time we get to any type of approaching normalcy in terms of supply chains and availability of hardware, availability of these chips, we're looking at, 2028, 2029 maybe. And by then, we're going to have been basically used to paying these higher prices for several years now. And even if all of those various factors work themselves out and everything, at that point, people will have been used to paying $700, $800 or more for their consoles. And I just don't see Sony or Microsoft having any incentive to go way back down because inflation is here to stay. And it is not when inflation goes down, it's not the price is going down. It is the rate at which they are increasing, returning to a normal rate. And so with high inflation, the prices, they're just moving up too quickly. And I just don't see a world where there's any incentive for these companies to price their things low, and they're not going to be able to because the hardware, all of the hardware underneath them is that much more expensive.
Yeah, we actually just put up an article as we're recording this that reportedly 2027's memory capacity is already sold out now. So definitely not easing up over the next year or so. But Bo, I guess what my concern is, I think it is realistic that the prices, they're not going to come down, but I don't think it's because people are going to get used to paying $1,000 for consoles. I don't think most people can afford $1,000 for consoles. which creates a pretty bad situation for the industry, which could lead to a crash. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Like, I don't really see consumers getting used to paying $1,000 for consoles because I don't think they can't. At least not at the scale that would result in 100+ million unit sales for a console generation.
Yeah, I think by then, I'm sure we'll see discounts and a 500 or cheaper price on maybe the Series X and the PS5, because by then we're going to be talking about the PS6 and Project Helix and whatever these next gen consoles end up being. And I think the real question is, what are those consoles going to be and what type of performance levels do they target? Because if we can't afford, if this is how much it costs to create a console that cost that was, built 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, um, what the next gen is going to be all that much more powerful in theory. And if it is that much more powerful, then it's going to require that much more of a hardware commitment to just for the price of the underlying hardware inside of it. It's well known that the consoles they're the best bang for your buck in terms of price to performance right when they come out, because they are a new generation. There's a generational leap in what they're capable of doing, and at least in years past, the console makers have been willing to basically they take a loss on the hardware itself because they owned the ecosystem, and they were willing to make that back in software over the course of the lifetime of that console. But the thing is we're now going closer to these open markets. Microsoft is putting its game on PlayStation consoles. PlayStation, at least they're keeping their stuff locked down, but more and more stuff is available on PC. Nintendo, again, it's kind of doing its own thing. And so that's what I wonder is, I agree that people can't just, there's not going to be a market for $1,000 consoles.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is there is a market for a $900 PS5 and PS5 Pro. And there is a market for $1,600 GPUs. The price of graphics cards went up significantly over this period of time because of all of the things that I mentioned, as well as they also saw these the booms in cryptocurrency that created massive GPU shortages in 2018 and 2020, and then of course through all the stuff that I just mentioned. And each time that happened, people got used to paying scalper prices. They didn't like it, but people were buying them. And then when the next gen came out of those graphics cards, it wasn't fully at the inflated scalper price, but it was also not as cheap as the generation before.
Okay, Max, let's bring you in here. What's your reaction to the thesis that the $500 PlayStation is over? And can the PlayStation business remain healthy at this elevated entry-level price?
Optimistically, I would love to say that Sony reads the room and sees that there are a whole lot of people who will pay $500 for a console, but not as many who are willing to shell out $900. The problem here is it's just a barrier to entry. Sony has these amazing games that are exclusive to PlayStation consoles, but they're not really churning them out at a quick enough clip that I think it justifies, the price of admission for the next gen of console. I just don't really feel like we need PS6 right now. Like, I don't think we're there for it. I mean, we've seen the price of the PS5 go up. The kind of running theme at the beginning of the console generation was the fact that there's nothing on there that really justifies needing a new console. So many games were either cross-platform or people were still playing PS4 games. And yeah, I mean, the PS5 Pro came along, and so far I haven't really seen a strong case to even grab one of those. So I'm really wondering what a PlayStation 6 could even do to, entice me, let alone justify a massive price tag that it's probably going to have. It really just seems like it's veering towards being a luxury item rather than an easy point of entry to gaming. Like, if you're spending $1,000, it's in for a penny, in for a pound. You might as well just keep saving and buy a high end gaming rig or a medium end gaming rig, and then swap out parts as needed. Obviously there's a bit more tinkering involved with getting on the PC side of things, but it's also, you get access to so many more games, and the games themselves are regularly cheaper. And Sony, a couple of console generations ago, you could count on them putting out a bunch of console exclusives. They were like, yeah, I'm buying a PlayStation, I'm getting it on the ground floor with this. I know what I'm getting. It's easy to set up. It's a proven quantity. But yeah, not so much. And again, it used to be halfway through the console generation, we would see a price cut, and that would get a whole bunch more people in the door. But this time around, I mean, we saw this with last gen. As opposed to the mid-gen refresh being oh hey, it's a leaner and cheaper model that we launched a few years ago. Now it's like they launched the more expensive one, and maybe you get a price cut that would do the PS4 Pro. But in this case, the PS5 got more expensive, and then we got the PS5 Pro. Which, if anything, the most killer feature of the PS5 Pro is that it makes the regular PS5 look cheaper by comparison, just by the sheer nature that it is $900. Which again, it just doesn't feel like that doesn't feel like a console price tag. And maybe that's what we should be paying for this kind of hardware given the state of everything. But I also just I don't know. It feels like a high-end electronic device rather than like a cool video game machine. That said, Sony does make those. Did you know Sony still makes Walkmen?
What?
They're MP3 players. They make one that has an MSRP of $3,700. It is a $3,700 gold-plated Walkman. It's on sale now for $2,600. It comes with a 3-month complimentary Audible premium subscription. Who is that for? That's for like Hideo Kojima when he's up late at night doing things with a credit card he's not supposed to. Like it is a absurd rockstar luxury item. I'm not going to say that they're going to put out a $3,500 console, but they know that there are people out there who will pay $1,000 for whatever the next thing is. I just worry that most people aren't those people.
Yeah, that's true.
And wow. I mean, you look at just today we got the news that the recent PS4, PS5 release of Call of Duty Black Ops 2, which is a 13-year-old game, sold 8 million copies. And it's not even a good port. People are fine playing older games. People are okay not getting games that are taking full advantage of cutting edge hardware. We don't need that. Like the best selling game of the year is Mecha Chameleon, which it's not a big budget game clearly. And Nintendo is proving that you can make great games using, lower end components. Lifespan of the Switch 1 being proof of that. That's a glorified Android tablet. And yeah, I mean, Sony, obviously they are in the business of selling cool consumer electronics, and Microsoft obviously wants to make a kind of consumer grade entry point to, high-end PC gaming, whatever the Helix is going to be. But, there will be cool games that take advantage of this power, but ultimately, like, do we even need it? And yeah, I feel like there's a whole other market of maybe the days of the $500 new console are gone, but I could see there being a whole other area of just maybe it's just lower end components for cheaper. Maybe there's an appeal for that. Yeah,
that leads directly into my next point, which is that if consumers can't afford to buy $1,000 consoles and Sony and Microsoft either can't figure out a way to bring prices down or refuse, then everything comes crashing down. Now, the video game industry has crashed before, and it bounced back bigger and better and healthier than it had ever been. The difference is that the crash of 1983 wasn't about an affordability crisis. It was about the market being flooded with low-quality software and consumer interest drying up. They got burned one too many times by the ETs and the Pac-Man home ports. People haven't lost interest in gaming today. They want to be able to access the newest games. But another big difference between today and 1983 is that today we have a rich 50-year library of incredible games, like Max was just alluding to. We now have the choice. You could pay $1,000 for a PlayStation 6 to have the luxury of buying the 1 or 2 releases PlayStation can manage a year, or buy an AYN Thor for $250, spin forever playing amazing older games. Okay, that's my take. I want to get both of yours on that. Bo, how about you first?
Yeah, I think it's 100% right, because yes, the library of games that are available to play is just so vast now, and that I think is the way this generation went, and the way the next generation probably will go too, is that yes, the consoles are going to just be this. It's the Halo device, and when I say Halo, I don't mean Halo Combat Evolved, but Halo as in the high end,
Yeah.
eh, reaching upper echelon of what the hardware can be. In the same way that if you look at graphics cards, there's everything from now 5090. If you're talking about the NVIDIA 50 series, a 5090 costs it cost $2,000 at launch. It's like $4,000 now. I don't know who's buying that, but apparently people are. But also graphics cards go all the way down to costing $200, $300, $400, and they play the same games, and it's just the graphic settings that you have to tweak. But to some extent, as long as the game is still playable, and yes, unfortunately, there are games that they can look so bad that they are not playable. Don't get me started on the new not Master Chief Collection, but Combat Evolved.
Campaign Evolved.
Campaign Evolved. The as long as the games still run, yeah, you can run it on lower end hardware. And I think that's why Nintendo has been so successful this generation. The Switch 2 is Nintendo's, I believe, second fastest selling console, or fastest selling and second best overall selling.
Mhm.
And it's because it's the affordable entry point. And the nice thing though about the Switch 2 is that yes, it is at a lower graphical point than the PS5 and the Series X, but it's not so bad as the Switch 1, because by the end of the Switch 1's lifetime, it was getting quite to the point of it was struggling pretty bad to play some of the latest games. But the Switch 2, it does a great job. And so there's not much that you need this high-end hardware for, other than making the games just look so photorealistic, or for the absolute best ray tracing, or whatever it is that needs that fully, maxed out settings. The critical thing though is going to come down to developer and game optimization, because when the hardware is really good and it can run things easily, then developers don't have to put as much work into optimizing their game. But when you look at games that the games that run the best on a massive variety of hardware, everything from super low end up to super high end, it's the stuff, it's the games that the devs have put in the optimization work to make sure that it works on that lower end hardware, and not only developing for the high end.
Yeah, Max, don't you think Nintendo is just, I mean, they've been set up for success in comparison to PS5 and Xbox Series X, because they've got the much more affordable option and the best, franchise library. You were talking about PlayStation's library. It's very strong, but it's not Nintendo. It's not Mario and Zelda.
No,
right?
and I mean, Nintendo's also, they're putting out, blockbuster family films. They're opening theme parks. Nintendo is shorthand for a video game console. It's been around long enough that you're gonna, if you want to get on the ground floor with video games, that's a pretty easy place to go. Pretty straightforward. The one thing I think they jumped on right when Sony was pulling out of this space is the handheld side of things. And speaking about what a PlayStation 6 could do that would get my attention, I honestly think if they were like, hey, we took a PS5 and we shrunk it and it's a Switch now, that would be kind of cool. It doesn't matter if it's a more powerful thing. Just the novelty of taking games on the go is hugely appealing. And I think the success of the Steam Deck and the ROG Ally X, or whatever, the various gaming handhelds, and the fact that Xbox has even dipped a toe into that market, there's definitely an appeal there. And it's kind of ironic, I bring up a $3,700 Walkman, but like Sony revolutionized the idea of portable entertainment with the original Walkman. Like, they understand that people do like to have this kind of isolated experience. The thing that Nintendo is kind of brilliant about is that they realize that when you're playing stuff on a screen that's yay big, it doesn't really need to be like 4K HDR 120 frames a second. It's nice when it runs smoothly, but when it comes down to it, that's not what makes a video game fun. Like Tears of the Kingdom was maybe the best game ever made, and it's a Switch 1 game. It's wild. And the fact that the Switch 2 is as successful as it is, and it has enough horsepower that games can get ported to it and run just fine, I think we're going to see a lot of third parties kind of hovering around Switch 2 compatible games. Like you can make something like Resident Evil Requiem, which is a gorgeous next gen cutting edge game, but it still runs fine on a Switch 2. So scoping projects accordingly is, I think a key thing. And the fact that Nintendo is holding down that side of the industry is nice and reassuring. It would just be kind of cool if, I don't know, Sony and Microsoft took notes and, I don't know, followed suit, however makes sense.
Well, viewers, listeners, in spite of all this doom and gloom, we are on the cusp of one of the most exciting months of the year for new game releases. September is absolutely stuffed with new games: Wolverine, Fire Emblem, Control Resonant, and more. So we want to know, what's your most anticipated game coming in September? Make sure to vote at IGN.com or on Spotify the day this episode goes live. We'll share the results with you next episode, just like we can last week's poll. We wanted to know, PlayStation fans who are playing Halo Campaign Evolved for the first time, what do you think? And the results are interesting here. They're very, very similar. 29% said, I love it, I want more. 28% said, I wish I had multiplayer. But those are the people that are playing it. And then 21% said, it's no kill zone. And 21% said, I've just never been interested in Halo. So very, very similar results on both sides of the coin there. All right, that is our show. Thank you to both Max and Bo. Thank you to everyone working behind the scenes to make this show possible. My name is Damon. We'll be back next week with more of the latest gaming hardware, and we'll see you then. This episode of Next Gen Console Watch was produced by Damon Hadfield, Jobert Atienza, and Sam Claiborne. Damon is also the host, and Max Scoville and Ryan McCaffrey serve as regular panelists. Technical direction is by Jobert Atienza, with technical production by Marian Franzen and Amir Rakib. Audio engineering is handled by Amir Rakib. Post-production editing is by Jobert Atienza, and graphic design is by Justin Vachon. Next Gen Console Watch is an IGN production and part of the Geek Media Network.